Hi, and welcome to The Dreaming Scientist, a quiet place in deep space with softly spoken science for sleepy minds. Tonight we drift from fire circles to megacities, how energy, tools, trust, stories, and simple rules scaled tiny bands into vast, living networks. No crazy stuff, just clear and gentle steps about how cities grow, falter, and breathe. Get comfortable. Let your breathing slow and let the history of us carry you towards sleep. But before you do that, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down below where you are watching from. It is always intriguing to know who is watching us from around the world. And thank you so much for being here. So how did we go from living in tribes out in nature to living in megacities? If you strip civilization down to the studs, you find a simple truth. People come together because together is safer and cheaper than alone. A single person can hunt, drink, and sleep, but one twisted ankle or one bad storm can end the story. A small band, even with the same tools, can take turns, watch the fire, trade tasks, and pass knowledge forward. In the deep past, this was the difference between scraping by and having a little extra. An extra hide for cold nights, an extra basket of nuts for a lean week, an extra pair of hands when a child fell sick. Humans discovered that sharing risk is a kind of technology. 10 people each keeping one spare saved skin becomes a quiet insurance pool. If one tent tears, the group patches it, and the cost hardly hurts. Fire sharpened the deal. Fire made food safer, softer, and more useful to the brain. Cooked roots and grains gave more energy than raw, so the group could afford longer walks, bigger plans, and the luxury of teaching. Teaching meant skills no longer had to die with the person who learned them. A knot, a trap, a song for timing paddles, a map in a story. These let the next day be easier than the last. Speech and gesture turned into language, and language did two jobs at once. It helped plan, we meet at the river bend at sunrise. And it set rules. Don't waste the good water, share the big catch. Rules were not written on stone. They were remembered in jokes, warnings, and tales about people who broke them and paid a price. That is how a group turns from a crowd into a community. Reputation becomes a soft fence. You keep promises because people talk. Inside that fence, trust grows and trust cuts costs. You don't have to guard your bag every second. You don't have to count every berry. You can lend a tool and know it will return. This saves time, which is the first currency. With saved time, people can try new things, better spears, smarter traps, sturdier shelters. Every tiny success stacks, and a simple camp becomes a place you can depend on. Dependable places invite more babies to survive, more elders to advise, and more skills to stay put. Over years, a circle of huts learns to handle the seasons, where to move, when to plant wild seeds near camp, how to smoke fish for the month when the river runs high and mean. Civilization is not palaces and walls at first. It is habits that make next year more likely. A dry rack that keeps food safe from dogs. A rule about not fouling the spring. A path everyone keeps clear because your feet will thank you at dusk. The great story begins not with kings, but with chores done well and shared. Cooked food gave us free energy, and free energy gave us free hands, and free hands gave us free minds for more than surviving the hour. Raw foods are hard work for the gut. Cooking is like a friendly pre-chew that unlocks calories. That extra fuel meant bodies could invest in larger brains without starving. Larger brains burn a lot. To feed them, days had to run smoother, and the smoothest days were built on rolls. Some people were better at spotting tracks. Others had patience to set snares. Some remembered which plants helped a cough. Others could sit and shape a tool blade without cracking it. This is the start of division of labor. It isn't fancy economics. It's, you do the thing you do best, while I do the thing I do best, and we both win. As roles formed, the group needed coordination. Who holds the ember when we move camp? Who minds the children near the bank? Who checks the snare line tomorrow? Language rose to meet this need, and with it came stories that stitched random days into patterns. Stories made sense of the world and acted like mental checklists. The tale of the flood that came fast, the song that counts the moons until the salmon run, the warning about the berry that stains teeth black. Stories also built belonging. A shared joke proves you share a map of what things mean. When you belong, you can plan farther out. You plant a few seeds by the latrine because you noticed rich soil there. You tie 2 logs so the next river crossing is easier. You start storing, skins full of fat, baskets of seeds, because the group believes it will still exist when the store is opened. Storage changes the math of life. With storage, you can sit long enough to weave a better net, to make a pot, to experiment with heat and clay until it hardens but doesn't crack. Clay pots are civilization's quiet heroes. They hold water, hold grain, and hold heat for cooking stews that feed many mouths slowly. Pots make home more attractive than the road. Once people stay a bit longer in one place, they start gardening the wild, pulling weeds that choke a patch, letting the sweet roots spread, keeping the goats away from the tender shoots. Dogs enter the story here too. They keep watch, clean scraps, and warm feet. With dogs near, nights feel shorter and safer, which frees more brain cycles for thinking ahead. Notice the pattern. Each small tool or habit reduces chance and increases choice. With choice comes responsibility. You can now overhunt a valley or strip a stream if you forget tomorrow. So groups invent norms about enough. Take only what we can replace. Leave seed trees, give thanks, rotate patches. The groups that remember this hold their luck. The ones that forget fade. Civilization is a slow bargain. Spend less on emergencies so you can spend more on improvements. A camp becomes a village when trust scales beyond the people you see every hour. Keeping trust at scale is work. People have tempers, envy, bad days, and bad luck. Someone's child breaks a pot. Someone's hunt fails 3 times. Someone sneaks extra from the store when nobody is looking. Left alone, small frictions turn into feuds that burn years of cooperation. So humans built soft law long before hard law. Soft law lives in reputation, ritual, and mediators. Reputation is a running account. Are you the kind of person who returns a tool? Do you pitch in on ditch day? Do you stand by your word when a storm makes the plan hard? Ritual keeps the score public and gentle. A harvest dance reminds everyone who worked the fields. A naming ceremony ties families. A quiet rite after a fight lets both sides save face. Mediators are those steady souls the group trusts to listen, repeat the facts, and guide both sides toward a repair that feels fair. Repair, not revenge, is the secret of durable groups. Revenge feels fast. Repair saves future trade. Alongside soft law, the brain uses gossip as a security system. Gossip is not only mean chatter, it is a network for warning and praise. Don't camp below the bend. The bank fell last spring. Do trade with Luma, her baskets don't split. In small doses, gossip enforces norms without fights. To prevent gossip from turning toxic, many groups invented rules of speech. Speak to the person first. Bring a witness. Never accuse in public without proof. These simple rules kept the cost of trust low, which is the price of a functioning market. even a tiny one. As villages grew, conflicts grew too. Who gets the best land? Who cleans the spring? Who watches the storage house? Out of these questions came councils, not kings yet, but circles where voices are counted. Some circles gave elders more weight. Some gave hunters a season's say. Some rotated speakers by lot. All of them tried to solve the same puzzle: how to turn many wants into one plan without splitting the group. The plan's power came from shared belief. If everyone agrees that the 3 stones mark the waterline and nobody builds lower, the flood saves the village instead of washing it away. If everyone agrees that a day each moon goes to the footpath, the path stays smooth and travel costs stay low. Agreement becomes a multiplier. It lets small acts add up. The first true magic of civilization is not writing or bronze, it is coordination. 100 hands moving in rhythm because the story says, this is what we do. When coordination works, the group suddenly has surplus time again, and surplus time invites experiments. Someone tries a new seed, someone times the moon and guesses when to plant, someone makes a mark on bone to track good and bad years. The village becomes memory with a roof. Farming did not start as a manifesto, it started as tinkering. People noticed that broken seeds sprouted near camp. They noticed that cleared ground gave bigger tubers. They learned that ashes from last season made a patch richer, that a fence saved young shoots from goats, that a canal from the stream kept soil damp when the sky forgot. The village and the land began a conversation. If we do this, will you do that? Over years, the answers shaped calendars. Calendars are not only numbers, they are rituals that tie people to tasks in time. Mend the weirs in the first week after the big flood. Burn the stubble only when the wind comes from the west. Plant when the first frogs sing. With farming came storage at a new scale. Pits lined with clay, jars sealed with resin, granaries raised on posts to keep out rats and damp. Storage turned luck into planning. Food carried across seasons meant babies could be weaned safely, elders could see more winters, and crafts could flourish because not everyone needed to work the field every day. The price was hard work and new risks. Fields tie you to a spot, and spots attract trouble: pests, raiders, disease. Living close to animals and to each other brought coughs and fevers that hunters rarely met. Villages learned the value of clean water and waste rules the hard way. They set latrines downhill, kept the well fenced, boiled water during certain months, and buried or burned trash beyond the wind line. These were not health codes, they were survival codes wrapped in custom. Tools changed too. Stone gave way, where it could, to copper then bronze, which took and held an edge well enough to clear more land and build better ploughs. Better ploughs met oxen, and suddenly one person could do work that once took many. Roads emerged from many feet and hooves choosing the same path to the same market tree. Markets began as market days, a rhythm. Every 7th sunrise, bring your baskets, your cord, your salt, your news. Trade pulled in things no valley could make alone: obsidian from that hot hill, shells from the sea, bright stones from the far river. Trade did more than decorate necks. It widened minds. New faces brought new songs, new tricks, and new ways to solve old problems. If your irrigation ditch kept silting, maybe the people from the north had a way to line it with clay. If your reeds split, maybe the basket weavers from the east had a stitch that held. The village became a node in a network of learning, not just goods. With all this came tally marks. When memory and trust were not enough, people made marks on clay to say, these many sacks for those many jars. At first, the marks were tokens sealed inside a clay envelope. Later, marks were pressed on the outside. Later still, marks could stand alone. This slow birth of accounting and writing is the hinge of history. It let promises cross distance and time. A jar could be counted even if it sat in another room. A debt could be paid after the flood. A rule could be carried to the next village without a singer. The land taught people to count. Counting taught people to agree when memory would fail. A city is a bet that coordination pays even when thousands of strangers live shoulder to shoulder. Early cities sprouted where water, fertile soil, and trade routes met, bends in great rivers, protected harbours, crossroads near passes. Water was life and transport. Rivers were highways before wheels had roads worth rolling on. People built canals to drink and to grow. They also had to build drains so the rains had somewhere to go. Drains are unsung heroes. When they worked, streets were passable, smells were fewer, disease spread slower. When they clogged, everyone suffered. To guard stores and people, cities raised walls, not because they loved war, but because walls cut risk and made markets credible. A wall said, "Your goods might still be here tomorrow, so bring them." Inside, markets became daily, then permanent. Stalls clustered, hides here, grain there, pots and pans along that lane, metalwork near the gate. Noise and bargaining were a sign of health. Quiet markets meant fear or hunger. Above or among the stalls rose temples and later palaces, places where the community thanked gods, settled disputes, and stored records. Temples were also granaries and banks. Priests tracked stores and promises. Scribes learned to make marks that could be read the same way by many eyes. Writing moved from how many to what kind to who did what to whom. Law was born as public memory carved or inked. The first laws were plain. Weights must match the standard. Debt must be limited. Water days rotate by quarter. Theft brings a cost. Injury brings repair. Were they always fair? Number. But posted law beat secret law. Knowing the rule bent fewer backs than guessing it. Cities needed money to speed trade. At first, money was whatever many people trusted. Grain measures, rings of silver, small bits of metal by weight. Later, rulers stamped coins to guarantee purity. Money cut the friction of barter and let value move without the thing itself. That speed let specialists bloom. Full-time bakers, weavers, scribes, builders, priests, guards. Specialization made everything cheaper and better, but it also made people interdependent. The baker needed the miller needed the teamster needed the wheelwright, and all of them needed water and law. Cities learned to manage fire and food as public goods. Cisterns, watchmen, night patrols with rattles, rules about ovens and thatch. Grain stores opened in bad years. When a city kept its promises, water flowed, weights were honest, disputes were heard, people flocked to it, and its lights pulled sailors in from sea and traders in from dust roads. When a city broke its promises, dirty water, rigged scales, soldiers taking what they pleased, people drifted away, and its stones grew silent. The lesson is simple and modern. A city is not buildings. It is trust made visible, in pipes and markets, in courts and coins, in the way strangers can meet and walk away better off than when they arrived. Writing and numbers did not fall from the sky fully formed. They grew from the daily headache of keeping track of who owes what, when, and in what amount. At first, there were clay tokens shaped like cones, balls and discs, each standing for a sack of grain, a jar of oil, a goat. People sealed tokens in clay envelopes and pressed the shapes on the outside so you could check the contents without breaking the seal. Then someone noticed you could skip the tokens and keep only the marks, and a ledger was born. Over centuries, wedge marks on clay became cuneiform for lists and letters. Carved pictures became hieroglyphs that later simplified. In other places, syllabaries bloomed. Later still, a handful of symbols that stood for sounds, alphabets, made writing faster to learn and spread beyond a small priestly class. Numbers made an even bigger jump when cultures invented place value and zero. Without place value, 999 needs many symbols. With place value, 999 is clear and 1001 is easy to add. Zero was a genius friend, a way to hold a place and to think clearly about nothing. With these tools, people kept accounts that could cross seasons. How much grain went into the store, how much came out each moon, which canal crew deserved their ration, who had repaid a loan. Measures became standards, the same pound, the same cubit, so trade did not spiral into argument, and merchants could trust scales beyond their village. Numbers also let people tame time. Calendars tied days to the sky, so planting and taxes and rituals lined up. Later, astronomers used geometry to predict eclipses and keep festivals on time. Writing captured contracts, laws, recipes, and repairs. It let a canal plan survive its builder. It let a city remember a flood height a century later and forbid houses below that line. It let a bad king be compared to a good one by more than rumour. It also gave us stories that travel further than shoes. Epics that taught courage and caution. Parables that coded rules of thumb. Letters that bound communities who never met by face. In workshops, marks on wax tablets became production lists. In ports, chalk on walls became shipping manifests. In temples and palaces, stacks of tablets were inventories that kept corruption in check because more than one scribe could count. Over time, accounting itself evolved. Merchants in busy cities used double-entry bookkeeping to see profit and loss clearly and catch errors early. States used censuses to plan rations, armies, and road crews. None of this sounds romantic, but it was a revolution in trust at scale. A name on a clay shard could redeem a loan. A tally on papyrus could prove wages paid. A carved law could set the same rule for a rich trader and a poor porter. Writing also shrank the cost of learning. Without it, every generation must relearn the same hard lessons. With it, children stand on adult shoulders on day one. Even the tools around writing matter. The abacus, the counting board, the stylus, the ink that didn't smear, the paper that stayed cheap, the press that stamped many pages in a day. Together they made knowledge copyable, and anything that can be copied cheaply can be improved quickly because more eyes see it and more hands try it. That is the quiet superpower behind cities. Strangers who will never shake hands can still cooperate because marks on clay, fibre, or screen let them share plans, prices, and promises without standing in the same room. Transport shapes civilization because it sets the price of distance. If moving a sack of grain 10 miles costs as much energy as growing it, farmers stay poor and cities stay tiny. Early people walked and carried, then they learned to bundle loads on backs, to drag sledges, to tame animals that could haul or ride. Donkeys on stony tracks, oxen on ploughed roads, camels across deserts, horses on the steppe. The wheel added leverage, but wheels hate mud and rocks, so societies that loved wheels also spent on roads, packed earth, gravel, timber causeways, stone paving, ditches for drainage, milestones to mark distance, way stations to rest animals and swap news. A good road was not just a line on a map, it was a maintenance promise. Crews fixed ruts, kept culverts clear, and punished thieves, or else trade would avoid the route and markets would die. Water, where possible, beat roads. A river and a sail make a barge move a mountain for the cost of a breeze. Cities cut canals to link basins and invested in locks to lift boats over bumps. Harbours got breakwaters and lighthouses so storms and shoals did not steal cargo. Sailors learned wind seasons, like the monsoon, so they could leave on time and return alive. Later, simple tools like the magnetic compass, better hulls, smarter rigging, and honest charts widened the world without adding fear. On land, traders stitched caravan routes across emptiness, building caravanserais, fortified inns with water, fodder, and a safe courtyard every day's travel. Each inn acted like a network node where news and prices met. Along these spines rode silk, spices, salt, horses, paper, numbers, and music. For states, transport was strategy. Empires poured labor into royal roads and postal relays, so messages outran trouble and armies arrived before borders broke. A letter that crosses a continent in a week lets a ruler tax fairly, feed a province, and stop a revolt with words instead of blades. But transport cuts both ways. It carries plague as easily as pepper, invasion as easily as ideas. The cure is not to shrink, but to design. Quarantine islands in harbours, checkpoints that inspect without humiliating, customs houses that standardise fees so traders are not robbed in slow motion. Over long centuries, the cost of moving a ton 1 mile fell as roads got smoother and boats got bigger. Each drop in cost changed the shape of work. Mills could sit by waterfalls and ship flour. Potters could sell beyond their village. Cities could specialise because they could import what they lacked. Later ages layered on rails, steam, engines, containers, and air. But the rule stayed the same. When moving things, people and messages gets cheaper, safer, and more predictable. Human networks thicken, prices stabilise, famine risk falls, and ideas blend. Good transport is not about speed alone, it is about reliability. A slow boat that always arrives beats a fast boat that sinks. A road with shade, water, and a patrol every day beats a shortcut that saves an hour but costs a life. Cities that remember this build boring miracles. Bridges that stand, ferries that run, schedules that keep, which is how the world grows small enough for strangers to feel like neighbours. As villages became cities and cities knit into regions, people built states to handle jobs too big for any market stall, guarding borders, standardising measures, keeping canals clear, settling disputes no guild could touch, and collecting taxes to pay for it all. At their best, states were a service company. They issued coins with honest weights so merchants wasted less time testing metal. They posted laws so common people could know the rules. They ran courts where even a poor farmer could be heard. They built and maintained roads and bridges that let trade and armies move. They kept granaries for bad years so bread riots did not burn the capital. To make this machinery work, rulers needed information. They counted people in censuses, listed fields and orchards, mapped canals, logged harvests, and tracked debts. Scribes and clerks turned numbers into policy. How much tax to ask without killing next year's goose? How many workers to draft for the dam? Where the road breaks most often and why? Taxes themselves took many forms. A share of grain, a corvée of days worked on public projects, a coin levy paid after harvest, tolls at gates, customs at ports. In return came security and infrastructure. The bargain was always tense. If taxes rose too high, people hid crops, fled, or rebelled. If taxes fell too low, dikes broke, armies starved, or bureaucracy sold judgments to survive. Good states learned legibility. They made the system clear so ordinary people could comply without a guide. And they learned mercy. They forgave in bad years so taxpayers lived to pay in good ones. Empires extended this logic across language lines. They offered standard coin, safe roads, toleration of local gods and customs in exchange for tribute, service, and basic loyalty. When they kept the deal, empires could last lifetimes and spread techniques, better plows, new crops, clever laws. When they broke the deal with cruelty, corruption, or chaos, provinces drifted away and frontiers went soft. Bureaucracy, the routine work of records, stamps, and seals, sounds dull, but it is the spine of large cooperation. A well-run office can move grain from a wet province to a dry one on time and with little theft. A rotten office can make every citizen feel plundered by paper. That is why reforms matter. Open records, standard fees, audits, appeals, rotation of posts, and local councils that watch the centre as the centre watches them. States also learned to borrow when the tax year could not cover a disaster or a war. Credit, trust written into loans and bonds, let them smooth shocks across time. If managed with honesty, credit built roads and aqueducts. If abused, it chained future harvests to past mistakes. In the end, empires teach a simple lesson in scale. The more people who share rules they understand, money they trust, courts they can reach, and roads they can use, the more likely strangers can cooperate without fear. That cooperation is wealth. It is also fragile. Keep the rules fair and the receipts clean, and millions can play the same game. Turn the rules into tricks, and the game breaks, sometimes quietly, sometimes with fire. If you listed the inventions that saved the most lives, you might guess vaccines, antibiotics, or surgery. They matter deeply, but the biggest lifesavers wore work boots and carried shovels. Clean water, sewers, drains, waste collection, and fire safety. Early towns learned by bitter experience that upstream is not the same as clean, that latrines must sit downwind and downhill, that wells need covers and curbs, that streets need ditches or storms turn alleys into disease. Civilizations that could built aqueducts and cisterns to store and share safe water. They paved sections of city where mud bred fever. They standardized baths and public latrines. They set rules for butchers and bakers, so blood and flour did not feed rats. These rules often came wrapped in religion or custom because written science lagged. Still, they worked because they changed exposure. When cities forgot maintenance, sickness followed. Epidemics, cholera, typhus, plague, rode filth and fleas and ships, and for centuries people chased the wrong causes. The turning point came when careful observers tied outbreaks to contaminated water and vectors, when microscopes revealed microbes, and when cities invested in pipes that kept clean and dirty flows apart. Chlorination, filtration, sealed sewers, trash collection, and street cleaning changed urban life more than most monuments. Add fire codes, spaced chimneys, brick walls, pumps, watches, and whole districts stopped burning every few decades. Add building codes and ventilation, and crowded tenements traded suffocation for air and light. Then came vaccination campaigns, from smallpox scarification to modern shots, and the city's risk fell again. Hospitals shifted from places to die to places to recover as sanitation and knowledge improved. Food safety moved from hope to inspection. Milk stopped killing infants when pasteurized. Markets learned to keep raw and cooked apart. Even cemeteries has moved, out of crowded centres, to protect wells. Today, the same logic applies with new tools: vector control for mosquitoes, stormwater parks that soak rain instead of pushing it into basements, cool roofs and shade trees that cut heat deaths, air quality rules that spare lungs, lead removal from pipes and paint, noise limits that protect sleep, traffic calming that protects bones and brains. Public health is not glamorous because success is nothing happening. No outbreak, no flood, no inferno, no mass poisoning. It's measured in birthdays, in school days not missed, in mothers who live to see grandchildren. And it is cheap compared to cures. A litre of clean water costs cents. A bed in an ICU costs thousands. A drain cleared costs minutes. A neighbourhood flooded costs years. Every modern city that works well owes its calm to crews who check valves, flush mains, patch asphalt, pump stations, and sweep leaves long before a camera arrives. That is civilization at its finest, millions living close with less fear because we quietly separate what must never mix and deliver what everyone needs every single day. Cities climb when they keep promises. Water runs, lights stay on, law is fair, streets feel safe, schools and clinics open on time, markets welcome strangers, and they fall when those promises are broken long enough that people lose faith and leave or fight. Geography helps, but it is not destiny. Some ports silt up and die, others dig new channels. Some river towns flood and move to higher ground, others rebuild in place and flood again. The difference is a culture of maintenance and a habit of honest measurement. Cities that count leaks, track bus arrivals, post school results, publish budgets, and fix small things before they grow protect their complex systems from rot. Cities that hide numbers or punish truth-tellers drift until a shock breaks them. Shocks come in many costumes: drought that starves canals and crops, plague that empties markets, earthquake that tests codes, war that burns stores, bad rulers who turn offices into toll booths, boom-bust cycles that leave half-built husks, technology shifts that move trade lanes away. Resilient cities don't bet everything on one river, one crop, one factory, one family. They build redundancy: 2 pipes, 2 suppliers. Diversity: many kinds of work, many kinds of people. And buffers: savings, granaries, parks that double as floodplains. They make it easy to migrate in with dignity and migrate out without penalty because people are the main engine. Fresh hands and ideas are oxygen. They make land rules that are clear and stable so builders invest for decades, not months. They police weights and measures so markets don't rot from small cheats. They train and pay inspectors, nurses, teachers, drivers, and line workers because these are the keystones. Without them, marble halls are empty shells. They reward repair in public budgets. $1 to keep a pump healthy beats 10 to replace a drowned block. They also tell themselves honest stories. A city that believes it is invincible refuses to adapt. A city that believes it is cursed refuses to try. The right story is practical hope. We face wind and water and time. We plan, we test, we maintain, we welcome, we learn. And they learn from other places, from past errors, from small pilots before big bets. They copy what works and retire what doesn't without shame. When decline comes, and all places see cycles, they soften it. Safety nets, retraining, greened lots where factories fell, museums and markets that keep memory and skill alive while new work grows. In short, cities rise when trust compounds and maintenance compounds. They fall when cheating compounds and neglect compounds. The test is simple enough for a child. Does the city make it easy to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing? If yes, people stay, invest, raise kids, and sing. If no, they hoard, bolt doors, and look for exits. Civilizations are just long stories told by daily routines. Keep the routines kind and reliable, and the story runs on for centuries. In early cities, most things were still made at home, grinding grain, spinning thread, drying bricks in the sun. But as streets got busier and markets steadier, work began to separate into crafts, and crafts into professions. Specialization was not snobbery, it was a simple math of practice. The more often you shape a pot, the smoother your wrist becomes, the truer your eye, the hotter and cleaner your kiln. The more often you sharpen a blade, the better you judge the steel and the temper of the fire. Soon a city discovered that letting some people make only pots and others make only shoes meant everyone had better pots and better shoes for less total effort. Out of this came workshops, small places where a master taught apprentices who carried coal, pulled bellows, swept floors, and slowly learned the motions that turn raw stuff into something useful. Apprentices became journeymen, workers who could travel with a tool roll and earn day wages. Then, after years and a test piece that proved skill, masters who could hang a sign and take on students of their own. Around workshops grew guilds. A guild was part union, part school, part insurance. It set standards so a loaf weighed what it should and a beam held what it promised. It set prices a little to avoid ruinous undercutting, and it collected dues so that if a roof fell on a baker or a ship took a tailor's goods, the family did not starve. Guilds also guarded secrets, glaze recipes, dye methods, clever looms, not just out of greed, but because the group had paid in sweat to invent them. At their best, guilds protected quality and trained the next generation. At their worst, they blocked new tools and froze outsiders out. Alongside formal guilds were markets of skill that had no banners, midwives and herbalists, storytellers and scribes for hire, porters who knew every alley, water carriers with strong backs and good manners, cooks who could feed a crowd from scraps. Work also organized time. There were busy seasons and quiet ones. The city learned to smooth the bumps, winter weaving for summer markets, repairs in dry months before storms, boat building when rivers sat low. Tools got better because many hands used them and complained when they failed. Handles fit palms more kindly, carts got wider rims, planes found truer angles, and simple jigs saved thumbs. When iron tools spread, wood bent to will. When steel blades arrived, wood sang. Leather workers learned to cut waste. Cloth cutters learned to nest patterns, and masons learned to move blocks with rollers, levers, and songs that kept 20 shoulders pushing on the same beat. Work also brought identity. A name grew longer. Mara. The person became Mara the Weaver. Proud, skilled, needed. The city learned to care for work by caring for workers. Shade near kilns, water at wells, rules about where smoke may vent, fire breaks near ovens, a fair place to settle disputes when a buyer claimed a flaw. And people learned to trade up the chain. A weaver joined with 5 others to hire a peddler, who joined with 10 peddlers to hire a guard for a road, who joined with a caravan that could cross a desert. This is the quiet magic of cities. One person's careful craft becomes 10 people's certain meal because the system is strong enough to carry value from hand to hand without dropping it. When a city respected craft, with real training, honest weights, safe shops and fair courts, work became more than survival, it became pride, and pride is fuel that does not run out fast. Barter is charming in stories, goat for grain, cloak for pot, but it frays when needs don't match. Money appeared wherever people needed a universal promise. At first, it was what many trusted: weighed silver, measured grain, rings of salt or cowries. Then rulers and city councils stamped coins that guaranteed purity and weight, which saved time and fights at the stall. But coins are heavy. Merchants wanted something lighter that still carried trust. So the market invented contracts, and later credit, written promises that a known person would pay at a known time. In busy ports, a buyer in one city could hand a seller a bill of exchange from a banker in another city. The seller could then walk to the banker's partner and turn the paper into coin minus a fee. Paper moved faster than metal, and risk spread across many shoulders. In storm seasons, merchants bought insurance, a fee paid now so that if the ship sank, the loss did not ruin a family or a shop. This was not gambling, it was risk pooling. 100 small fees paid the rare big loss and let trade keep flowing. Behind the counter, bookkeeping grew from neat lists into double entry. Every sale recorded as money in and goods out, every cost as money out and goods in. It sounds dull, but it let a shopkeeper see truth. Which goods truly earned, which routes bled cash, who paid on time, who needed a gentle nudge. Clear books also made partnerships possible. Two cousins could pool coin and hire a captain because they had a shared ledger they both believed. As voyages stretched longer and cargoes got bigger, people invented the joint stock company. Many owners, shares easy to split, a manager hired to run the ship and dock. Now big projects, canals, mills, workshops with dozens of spindles could rise without a prince's purse. Markets also invented fairs, seasonal supermarkets where goods from many regions met. Fairs solved problems, honest scales, standard contracts, courts that ruled fast, so strangers could trade as if they were neighbours. Over time, markets learned to post prices so haggling did not waste the day, to grade goods so fine had a shared meaning, to build warehouses that gave receipts you could trade like money while the grain stayed put. All of this reduced friction. Lower friction meant a farmer could earn more from the same field, a potter from the same hands, a sailor from the same wind. With extra came charity and mutual aid. Guilds kept funds for funerals and bad luck. Temples ran soup and shelter. Cities set almshouses and orphan care. This was self-interest with a heart. People who didn't fall through cracks kept buying bread, paying rent, and learning trades. Trust is the true currency. It lives in clear rules, fair courts, clean books, honest weights, and reliable money. When those hold, markets do not just make rich men richer, they widen choices for ordinary families. What to eat, where to live, what work to try, and choices are dignity. When those fail, coin clipped, contracts tricked, courts bought, people hoard, talent leaves, and stalls go quiet. Money is only metal or paper until a city wraps it in trust you can fold. Civilization is built on pipes and ledgers, yes, but also on meaning. People do not work hard, share fairly, or forgive mistakes for numbers alone. They do it because they feel part of a story bigger than today. Temples, churches, mosques, shrines. These were not just places to ask the sky for rain. They were meeting houses where disputes cooled, vows were made, songs were taught, and calendars were kept. Festivals set the clock of the year. Plant now, rest now, harvest now, remember now. When drums and bells called a crowd, the city reminded itself who we are. It fed the poor, welcomed the traveller, celebrated births, grieved the dead, and told the same tales again so the young could hear the rules without feeling lectured. Stories carried morals in the pocket. Be honest in weights. Return what you borrow. Leave a corner of the field for those who lack. Priests and elders were not only gatekeepers of gods, they were archivists who remembered floods and famines, kept genealogies, mapped taboos that protected wells and groves, and taught rituals that turned chaos into pattern. Wash here, eat this, rest then. Belief could also bind across distance. A pilgrim road is a kind of trade route. Inns and wells along the way become bridges between towns. Ideas ride in with pilgrims and never leave. Art bloomed where belief set patronage. Painted walls, carved stone, woven banners, sung psalms. Beauty was not extra, it was glue. Shared symbols made strangers feel like kin and soothed fear during hard years. At their best, faiths made cities gentle, laws softened by mercy, patience for foreigners with decent behavior, care for widows and orphans, food shared during fast days, hospitality offered as duty not charity. At their worst, faiths were weapons, used to split neighbour from neighbour, to crush new thought, to excuse greed and cruelty. The difference often lay not in the doctrine, but in the institutions, whether leaders tolerated disagreement, whether courts put evidence over rumour, whether debate could happen without blood. Wise cities learned to layer identities. You could be a potter and a citizen and a believer and a neighbour all at once. If one layer cracked, the others held. Music carried the load when words failed. Lullabies that soothed hungry nights. Work songs that pulled ropes together. Anthems that promised, "We will rebuild." Festivals also acted as safety valves. People danced, joked at the mighty behind masks, and flipped roles for a day so pressure didn't boil over. Belief, in short, was a technology for cooperation. It taught self-control, generosity, and hope. It punished betrayal. It promised that good behavior would be seen even when no guard watched. It wasn't perfect, but it helped cities turn crowds into communities that could face trouble without falling apart. Where there is grain, there will be someone who wants it without paying. Cities learned to defend or die. At first, defenses were simple. A ditch and a wall of earth, then timber palisades, then stone with towers to stop ladders and gates with bars to stop rams. As tools improved, so did siegecraft. Rams, catapults, sappers who tunneled, later gunpowder and cannon that turned tall walls into rubble. Fortification answered with angles and low, thick walls that deflected shot, moats that stopped digging, and bastions that supported each other with crossing fire. But walls alone cannot feed a city under siege. People stockpiled, rationed, dug wells inside, and built secret posterns to sneak out in night. War was expensive in coin and trust. A standing army keeps raiders away, but food and pay must arrive on time, or soldiers turn from shield to threat. Wise rulers kept armies small and professional, rotated service, and used militias for local watch. They also built signals, beacons, drums, flags, and roads so help came fast. Spies and scouts mattered as much as swords. Knowing where an enemy marched saved lives. Diplomacy grew because war bled everyone. Envoys with safe conducts, treaties with seals, hostages who were guests with knives at their backs. These were crude tools for keeping promises across borders. Trade itself was a peace plan. If your merchants earn in my markets, you will think twice before burning them. Marriages linked houses, oaths bound kings, shared shrines gave neutral ground. The best defense was often fair dealing at home. Cities that treated their own people badly leaked defectors and invited enemies to pose as liberators. Cities that treated neighbours fairly collected friends who warned them and helped them stand. War also drove invention, better metal, better wheels, better medicines, better maps. But the same roads and smelters that feed armies can feed trade if a city chooses. The real craft is deterrence with restraint, strong enough that no one tries you, calm enough that you do not try everyone. Codes of war: don't burn fields, don't poison wells, treat messengers safe, spare markets, were not always kept, but when kept they saved harvests and future peace. After fights, reconciliation mattered. Clear, limited punishments for leaders, amnesty for ordinary hands, reparations that rebuild bridges, not only palaces, and memory rituals that honored the dead without teaching children to hate forever. Peace is a skill like carpentry. It needs practice, institutions, and habits, councils where hot words cool, judges who take time to listen, merchants who argue for open gates, poets who remind people what is lost when drums beat too long. A safe city is not the one with the tallest walls. It is the one whose neighbors prefer it alive. If roads are for goods, schools are roads for minds. Early schooling lived in temples and palaces where scribes learned to read grain lists, legal cases, prayers, and star charts. But as cities grew, people saw that writing and numbers should not be locked in a chest. Schools opened with simple benches, wax tablets, and a master who taught letters by voice and hand. Learning was slow, memory heavy, and often harsh, but even basic literacy widened life. You could read a contract, send a letter, keep your own accounts. Libraries gathered the minds of many ages, clay tablets stacked in jars, scrolls in pigeonholes, later codices on shelves. A good library saved duplication. The next engineer did not have to rediscover how to make a siphon or a vault. The next doctor could copy a list of herbs and add a note about dose. Copyists kept texts alive. Cataloguers made them findable. Commentators argued with margins until, slowly, clarity grew. In some cities, scholars built observatories to watch the sky and keep calendars honest. In others, they dissected animals to learn structure. In many, they debated law and ethics so courts could borrow wisdom instead of temper. Apprenticeship trained hands. Schools trained eyes and minds to see patterns. Then came a shock: the printing press. Suddenly, a month's copying became a day's printing. A book moved from rare to reachable. Errors shrank because many readers could spot them. Pamphlets spread ideas like sparks, some true, some wild, all asking to be weighed. Alongside printing came cheap paper, better inks, and postal routes, a nervous system for thought. Out of this ferment, a new habit took root: the scientific method. Not a temple secret, not a master's word, but tests that others could repeat, measures agreed in advance, instruments calibrated against standards, reports that admitted errors and invited correction. This was a cultural revolution in humility. We might be wrong. Check us. Societies that adopted it slowly built technologies that worked in any city because they relied on shared units, meter, kilogram, second, shared drawings, and shared rules for evidence. Schools also softened. Many places built public education so children of potters and porters could learn letters and numbers without begging a priest. Literacy rose. Voters could read laws, workers could read manuals, travelers could read signs. Universities gathered specialized knowledge, law, medicine, engineering, and set long tracks of study with degrees that signaled skill to strangers. Libraries became public rooms with light and rules that said the mind of a cobbler mattered too. None of this made people perfect, it made them better at sharing truth. When schools taught how to learn, not just what to recite, cities acquired a repair kit for errors. When libraries kept many voices, cities avoided cults of one. When printers spread good manuals, how to dig a drain, how to inoculate a child, how to build a truss, streets got safer and roofs stayed up. Knowledge climbed a patient ladder built by many hands. When a rung broke, the next hands repaired it. That is civilization's bet. With light, paper, time, and kindness, a child can stand higher than kings who never read. Every city runs on energy, and the story of civilization is, in part, the story of finding fuels that are denser, cleaner, steadier, and easier to move. Early towns burned wood and charcoal for heat, cooking, bricks, and metalwork. Wood is friendly. You can see where it grows and how much is left, but it ties growth to nearby forests. When fuel rides in by cart, costs soar and hills go bare. People learn to stretch muscle with water wheels and windmills. Rivers turn stones for grinding grain. Bellows blew in forges. Sawyers cut planks with steady, free power when the weather agreed. But rivers freeze or flood, winds stall, and cities wanted reliable muscle on demand. Enter coal. Ancient sunlight packed tight. Coal burned hotter than wood and was easier to ship by barge and rail once those existed. It fed steam engines, which turned heat into motion and motion into work in mills, pumps, and crucially, trains. Steam pumped water from mines so more coal could be dug. It lifted buckets from deep shafts and pushed factory lines that no river could reach. With coal and steam, the day's pattern changed. A workshop no longer had to sit by a waterfall. A city could rise inland and still hum. The price was smoke, soot on sills, coughs in lungs, rivers turned black where ash and dye washed out. Cities learned hard lessons, set chimneys high, move tanneries and coke ovens downwind, plant belts of trees and later set rules for stacks and scrubbers. Then came gaslight, first from coal gas and later from safer systems which lit streets and shops after dusk. Light after sunset is a quiet revolution. Safety improves, reading grows, and evening work and leisure gain hours. Still, gas flames carry risk and soot. The next leap was electricity, a way to send power along wires so the fire stays somewhere else. At first, small dynamos ran in mills and theatres. Then engineers learned to step voltages up and down with transformers so electricity could travel miles with little loss. A C grid spread. DC stayed where it fit best. Motors shrank and slipped under benches. Belt drives gave way to individual motors, and factory layouts freed from shafts and pulleys. Electric light made mills safer and homes calmer. Elevators stacked cities upward. Trams and subways made them wider without more horses. Refrigeration let markets sell fresh food without blocks of river ice. In a century, energy went from muscle and flame in the room to invisible flow in copper and steel, controlled by switches and meters. The pattern behind every transition is the same. New energy lowers the cost of work, extends the day, and widens choice, while pushing cities to manage side effects: smoke, spills, noise, heat. Later fuels: oil for engines, gas for heat, uranium for steam without soot, sunlight and wind captured by panels and turbines. Each brought their own trade-offs. Oil made cars, planes, and trucks possible, which rewrote maps and suburbs. It also brought fumes, crashes, and dependency. Nuclear made dense, steady power. It also demanded care and trust to handle waste and rare accidents. Sun and wind are clean at point of use, but they move with weather. Cities learn to mix storage, demand timing, interconnections, and efficiency. Better insulation, smarter lights, quiet motors, so a modern grid stays steady through night, storm, and dinner hour. The least glamorous heroes are the wires, transformers, pipes, and pumps maintained at 3 a.m. By crews few will meet. When those parts work, a city's heartbeat is so smooth you forget it exists. Water arrives under pressure, lights answer your finger, trains break and go, hospitals hum, food stays cold, and nights are safe. Energy is time in a bottle, a way to trade heat and motion from somewhere and somewhen into comfort and work here and now. The cities that prosper learn to count full costs, diversify sources, trim waste, and plan long, so children inherit cleaner air and steadier lights than their grandparents ever knew. Before factories, most work followed sun and season. So when rain softens soil, reap when grain heads bow, mend nets, when storms lock boats at harbour, rest at noon in deepest heat. Industry asked the city to dance to a stricter beat. Steam engines and later electric motors turned buildings into giant instruments that played best when every hand moved on time. Towns set standard hours. Railroads invented time zones so schedules didn't break, and workshops installed whistles and clocks to call shifts. Inside, work reorganized into flows. Raw cotton in this door, carding and spinning along this row, weaving and finishing along that one. Goods out by the yard gate, interchangeable parts made by precise gauges let machines be fixed fast, and goods snap together without fitting by eye. Assembly lines cut waste, moving the product past the worker so each person could master one step and repeat it safely and swiftly. The upside was clear. Prices fell, quality rose, and families who once owned 2 shirts could own 6. Tools once for princes, glass windows, iron stoves, printed books, arrived in ordinary homes. The downside was also clear. Noise, lint, heat, monotony, and injury if guards and rules were lax, child labour, and 16-hour days wherever law and conscience lagged. Workers answered with unions, petitions, strikes, and cooperatives. Bit by bit, cities wrote limits into law: shorter days, the weekend, bans on child labour, machine guards, ventilation, and compensation when harm still happened. Inspectors learned to measure dust, noise, and light. Owners learned that safer, steadier workforces produce more with fewer disasters. Taylorism and time and motion studies tried to squeeze waste from motions. Sometimes they found smart fixes, sometimes they ground people into parts. A wiser path blended ergonomics, fit the station to the body, rotation, change tasks so minds and muscles rest, breaks and bonuses for teams that improved the line. Electrification changed factory guts. No longer chained to a main shaft, machines could spread, lines could bend, and small firms could use a few motors without building temples to power. Lighting improved accuracy. Elevators let workshops rise. Trams brought workers in from leafy streets so smoke and soot did not own every block. Later, office work grew. Clerks, designers, accountants, new crafts of paper and then screen with their own risks. Eye strain, stiffness, stress. Just as mills learned to shield gears, offices learned to shield attention with quiet rooms, shorter meetings, and sane mail. Industry also changed home rhythms. Factory whistles set breakfast early and supper late. The icebox and then the fridge let meals keep. The washing machine saved hours of scrubbing. Cheap clocks made appointments real. Cities wrote a new civic time: school bells, shop hours, train tables, movies at 7 and 9, and later the blue glow of TV and the buzz of 24-hour stores. With every tick, people asked for give as well as take. Fair pay for fair time, overtime rules, maternity and sick leave, a pension for old age. When industry listened, by sharing gains in wages, shorter hours, and safety, cities grew middle classes who bought what they made, learned at night school, travelled by rail and later air, and sent children higher than they had climbed. When it didn't, anger simmered and sometimes boiled. The quiet truth is that factories taught us to coordinate at scale, and workers taught factories to care for humans. The sweet spot is a schedule stable enough to plan a life, flexible enough to handle a fever and a school play, and respectful enough that people feel like makers, not bolts. Cities are engines not just of goods but of people, and people move for simple reasons: push and pull. Push is the failed crop, the flood, the war, the rumour that taxes or soldiers are coming, the mine closing, the school that never opened. Pull is the wage, the safety, the cousin with a room, the factory needing hands, the port needing stevedores, the hospital hiring aides, the cafe that says start Monday. Migration rarely looks like a grand march. It looks like one person first, then chain migration. Sister joins, friend joins, a wedding, a baby, a shop that sells home spices on a lane that suddenly smells like both your old town and your new one. Newcomers land where rent is low and work is close. Tenements by mills, basement rooms by docks, row houses by tracks. These first neighborhoods can be crowded, loud, and lively. Many languages, many shifts, many ways to cook beans. They can also be risky. Landlords who pack beds, bosses who shave pay, fire codes ignored, schools too small, streets thin on trees. That is why cities built settlement houses, night schools, legal aid, clinics, and public baths. Why churches, mosques, temples, and mutual aid societies sprang up to teach language, broker jobs, lend for funerals, send small remittances home, and celebrate holidays so kids felt roots and wings together. With time, second generations mix tongues and maps, grandma's stew with cafeteria pizza, holiday dance next to school band, bilingual jokes that only make sense on this block. Some neighbours worry about change. Nativist waves crash in most eras, claiming newcomers ruin wages or ways. Yet the ledger often runs the other way. Migrants start shops, fill labour gaps, pay taxes, raise children who become nurses, carpenters, coders, and poets. They bring recipes, rhythms, and risk tolerance that refresh old streets. The city's job is to lower frictions so mixing goes well. Clear rules for housing safety, fair hiring, schools that welcome many languages, libraries that offer classes and quiet, parks where families share space, permits that let street vendors work cleanly and legally, transit that links new neighborhoods to jobs without 3 transfers. Policing needs trust. Officers who know names, translators, community boards, and a habit of treating everyone as neighbours, not targets. Over decades, neighbourhoods cycle. The port gets cranes, the mill closes, the train moves freight elsewhere, and a street that once sold hammers now sells noodles or laptops. If a city fights every shift, it grows brittle. If it flows while protecting affordable roofs and small businesses, it keeps both memory and momentum. Many of a city's best ideas come from people who had to invent new maps, suitcase entrepreneurs, refugee engineers, farm kids who read by lantern and then wired a block. The melting pot image is too smooth. Reality is a stew where pieces keep their shape but share a broth. Good policy stirs gently, adds spice, skims scum, and keeps the pot on steady heat so everyone cooks through without burning. Every healthy city learns to ask, again and again, who counts? Early charters often counted only landowners, guildmasters, or soldiers. Over time, people pushed to widen the circle. More hands on the rope, more voices in the hall. The tools were simple and stubborn. Petitions, pamphlets, strikes, boycotts, lawsuits, marches, elections. The wins came step by step. Trial by jury, so power must persuade. Freedom of the press, so bad plans meet sunlight. Assembly rights so people can gather without being accused of plotting. Charters that bind rulers as well as ruled. Parliaments and councils where taxes require consent. Ballots in secret so bosses and bullies cannot punish choices. Suffrage extended from property holders to all men, then to women, then protected for all races and creeds. Civil rights that say the law's door opens the same for every name. labour rights that limit hours and danger, tenant rights that set habitability, consumer protections that ban poison in food and lies on labels. Each gain was argued as fairness and defended as stability. A city where people feel heard fights less and builds more. After fires and factory disasters, cities wrote safety codes. After bank panics, they wrote deposit rules. After scandals, they wrote open records and procurement laws. After droughts, they wrote water sharing plans. None of this ends corruption or folly, but it gives recourse, someone to appeal to, a paper trail to check, a vote to throw the rascals out. Policing fits here too. Good policing is service. Slow words, fast help, fair enforcement, and oversight that honours good work and corrects harm. Bad policing, brutal, biased, unaccountable, teaches neighbourhoods to fear and fuels cycles that burn trust for decades. Courts matter when doors are real for poor and rich alike. Legal aid, small claims courts, and community mediation keep small grievances from turning into big feuds. Budgets are moral documents. Publishing them in plain language lets citizens see priorities and argue them. Census counts shape schools and roads. They must be honest or maps warp. Minority protections keep majorities from using ballots to crush basics. Worship, speech, equal pay for equal work. The long walk of rights is messy. 2 steps forward, 1 back. But across centuries, the pattern is wider circles. Slaves to citizens, guildless to guilders, renters to voters, women to lawmakers, migrants to mayors. Cities that lock the circle fall behind. Talent leaves, grievance grows. Cities that widen it carefully, with standards and responsibilities, gain a deeper bench of problem solvers and a steadier we. The work never ends. Each generation must renew rules, tune them to new tools, and teach them in schools so kids grow up knowing how to disagree without burning the table. A city is not only jobs and roofs, it is the spaces between, the sidewalks, stoops, parks, markets, libraries, baths, plazas, waterfronts, and little corners with a bench that say, "Stay a minute." Good public space is infrastructure for friendship. Sidewalks wide enough for 2 strollers to pass without glare, curb cuts that welcome wheels and canes, shade trees that lower summer heat and catch storm water, street lights that are warm, not harsh, so faces are visible and nights feel safe. These details decide whether strangers meet as neighbours or dodge as obstacles. Parks are not luxuries, they are lungs and nervous systems. Grass and trees lower blood pressure. Paths invite movement. Open lawns host games and markets. Playgrounds teach kids balance and courage. Dog runs mix people who would never meet. Ponds double as storm basins when rains come hard. A small park every 10 minutes walk beats 1 grand garden an hour away. Libraries are the city's free living rooms. Light, quiet, tools, and help without a bill. Books, internet, homework tables, job search corners, language classes, story time that teaches toddlers to love words and to share space. Public markets bring food near and keep farmers honest. They also turn errands into rituals. A hello to the apple seller, a recipe from the spice stall. Baths, pools, and fountains cool bodies and tempers. Plazas are stages for concerts and protests, the safety valves of democracy. Waterfronts that once held warehouses can hold promenades and ferries. The best make room for working water too. Boat repair, fish, a crane for small cargo, so the city remembers its roots. Design matters. Eyes on the street from windows and shop fronts deter trouble. Mixed uses keep blocks lively at different hours. Narrower lanes slow cars so people feel safe to walk. Benches every little while invite elders to rest. Public toilets with attendants keep dignity and health. Drinking fountains reduce plastic and thirst. Wayfinding signs help visitors exhale. Inclusive design for blindness, deafness, autism, age turns the city into your city. Small touches add up. Music not too loud so conversation wins. Rules that welcome street vendors with cleanliness and lane discipline. Permits for sidewalk cafes that leave room for wheelchairs. Trash bins and recycling close at hand. Crews who sweep leaves before they clog drains and flood corners. Public space also needs programming. Movie nights, dance lessons, craft fairs, reading hours, and maintenance steady enough that people trust to park at dusk as much as at noon. When neglect sets in, broken lights, graffiti that's not art but threat, long grass that hides syringes, trouble follows. The fix isn't panic, it's care. Fix lights fast, plant, paint, invite. Cities that invest in third places, cafes, barbers, community gardens, senior centres, end up with lower loneliness, lower crime, and higher serendipity. Mentors meet students. Startups meet customers. Widowers meet chess partners. Public space is where a city practices being a city, sharing shade, waiting turns, making room, hearing a busker, walking around a stroller, lending a hand on a curb. Make those places generous, and the city becomes a place worth sleeping in and waking up to, because the spaces between doors feel like home. A city is only as kind as its rooms at night. Work, markets and parks matter, but people measure life by the place they close their eyes. Early homes were mud and thatch, walls patched after every storm. As skills grew, bricks were fired, timbers joined, roofs tiled and windows glazed. Building codes, first customs, later laws, came from fires and quakes that taught harsh lessons. Chimneys set back, walls braced, staircases wide enough to flee, courtyard wells not filled with trash. Good codes are not red tape. They are written memory that keeps families alive. As cities swelled, housing pressure rose. A farm family could build slowly with cousins and time, but a dock or factory pulling thousands needs roofs fast. That is when you see tenements and courtyard blocks, rooms stacked, light and air often tight, shared toilets down hallways. When landlords cut corners and officials look away, mold, fire, and disease follow. When cities inspect and enforce, the same blocks can be decent starts, solid stairwells, clean water, windows that open, courtyards with a tree. Over the centuries, materials marched. Brick and timber to steel and concrete to engineered woods and high-performance glass. Each step allowed height and density without so much risk, and each demanded maintenance. Repoint the mortar, treat the beams, check the rebar, seal the joints. Because even the best building fails if nobody minds it. Fairness enters through access. In many places, rules once barred groups by race, tribe, caste, or creed. In others, banks drew red lines on maps and starved whole streets of loans. In some, big roads cut neighborhoods in half because they were easiest to condemn. These choices echo for generations. Wealth flows where mortgages flow. Schools bloom where tax bases bloom. Repair means more than apology. It means opening credit, legalizing sensible additions and small backyard homes, letting apartments near transit, and protecting renters from sudden crushing hikes while still allowing owners to maintain and improve. The city's housing math is simple and stubborn. When more people want to live near jobs and schools, you need more homes of many kinds. Studios and big flats, townhouses and mid-rises, dorms and senior units, so people can right-size without leaving their community. Some will be private, some non-profit, some public. All work better with transit, groceries, parks and schools within a short walk so families don't spend incomes on cars. Safety is daily work. Smoke alarms, sprinklers, clear exits, gas leak detection, earthquake straps, wind anchors, insulation that doesn't burn, and weather sealing that keeps damp out. Beauty matters too. Windows that face the street so neighbours watch over neighbours, stoops and porches where elders sit, courtyards where kids chase balls, a ground floor with small shops and visible doors so sidewalks feel like living rooms. When prices gallop ahead of wages, the city must steady the horse, build on public land, convert empty offices, allow modular and off-site construction that goes up cleanly, offer down payment help for first-time buyers, and support repairs for aging houses so landlords don't choose demolition to escape leaks. Homelessness is not a mystery. It is a lack of cheap, safe rooms plus health struggles. The quickest fixes are safe shelters, navigation centres, rent help before eviction, and supportive housing with counselling. So doors stay shut behind those who need quiet most. A roof is dignity. A city full of dignified roofs is a city that sleeps. Every dawn, a hidden orchestra plays, so your breakfast appears on time. Wheat grown months ago becomes bread within walking distance. Greens cut at night crunch at noon. Milk, eggs, fish, and fruit move in a quiet race against time and heat. Old towns ate what fit a day's walk, with salt, smoke, and sun as the only refrigerators. Cities stretched that day with canals, carts, and cold cellars. Later, with ice cut from lakes and carried by sawdust-packed trains. Later still, with compressors and refrigerated trucks that make a cold line from field to fork. The cold chain is one of civilization's soft miracles. Steady temperature from warehouse to stall to kitchen keeps food safe and reduces waste. Markets are the face of this system. Wholesale halls where boxes fly before dawn, street markets where farmers trade faces with families, and corner shops that fill the gaps between big weekly trips. Rules matter. Clean water, separate raw and cooked, honest weights, pest control, hand washing that is possible because sinks exist. Restaurants and food stalls are culture on a plate. They also are physics and hygiene. A good city makes it easy to obtain permits, learn safe practices, pass inspections, and serve food that will not send anyone to bed in pain. Fair kitchens share tips, train staff, post schedules early, and set fans to whisk heat away from the line. Customers feel this as care. Food deserts, places with plenty of calories but few fresh choices, grow when rents push grocers out and transit is thin. Fixes include mobile markets, co-ops, incentives for small green grocers, urban gardens that teach kids and lower a block's temperature, and delivery zones where bikes can run safely so elders and busy parents can order fresh without a car. Farms deserve a say in city life. Their water, soil, and wages decide city health. Contracts that pay fairly, not just cheaply, keep growers alive for the next season. When storms break roads or wars block ports, cities with diverse suppliers, grain reserves, and local production ride smoother. Food safety is science plus habit. Pasteurization made milk safe. Temperature logs keep fish honest. Traceability, a label that knows a field and a day, lets health teams recall only the bad lot, not waste good food. Waste itself is a frontier. Cities that sort organic scraps into compost feed parks and farms and cut methane from dumps. Cities that donate excess from grocers and event halls turn spoilage into supper. Nutrition is not a lecture, it's design. Water fountains over soda fountains, fruit at eye level, school lunches that are real meals cooked in real kitchens by paid adults who may be the only cooks some children see each day. When the city respects food workers, pickers, drivers, market hands, cooks, by paying on time and keeping back doors safe, the whole system stays sweet. A calm, fair food web means fewer panics, fewer empty shelves, fewer hungry afternoons, and the quiet pleasure of a ripe tomato that travelled far without losing its sun. Public health keeps whole neighbourhoods safe. Medicine keeps each person standing. In villages, a midwife, an herbalist, a bone setter, and a wise elder could handle most days. In cities, disease mixes faster, accidents multiply, and rare conditions finally appear, so care must scale. Clinics handle colds, vaccinations, prenatal care, and stitches. Hospitals hold surgery, births, trauma, and long, careful watches through nights. A functioning system does three things well: prevention, access, and response. Prevention is cheap. Vaccines, clean needles, safe sex education, blood pressure checks at markets, eye and hearing tests in schools, air filters in classrooms and clinics, shade at bus stops, and smoke-free rules that spare lungs. Access is design. Clinics near transit and open outside work hours. Fees understandable and posted. Interpreters for language and deafness. Ramps and lifts without maze-like routes. Electronic records that follow a person securely from one door to another so stories don't need repeating in tears. Response is skill plus logistics. Ambulances that arrive, triage that is fair, supplies stocked before storms, plans to surge beds when outbreaks bloom. Epidemics remind cities to be humble. Germs don't read borders, but they read bus maps. The strongest tools are transparent data, honest risk messages, testing that is cheap and close, isolation that is possible because food shows up at your door and rent doesn't crush you, and backstops for workers who stay home sick. When people trust that care is both competent and kind, they cooperate. When they fear costs or shame, they hide and disease wins. Mental health is health. Crowding, noise, debt, loss, and fear can bend minds and bodies. A good city knits counsellors into schools and clinics, funds crisis lines that answer fast, sets up safe crisis centres instead of only jails, and trains police to de-escalate and step back when a clinician should lead. Addiction care is not moral theatre, it is medicine plus community, medications that cut craving, therapy that rebuilds routines, housing that holds people in place until their nervous systems calm, jobs that give purpose. Hospitals themselves must be engineered like the finest bridges. Backup power, redundant oxygen, fire doors, sterile flows, hand hygiene designed into sinks and corridors, air changes that sweep pathogens out. Pay and rest for nurses and aides are not cost to cut. They are the heartbeats that keep wards safe. Finally, justice matters. A city where wealthy districts have gleaming clinics and poor ones wait months for basics will pay in avoidable deaths, lost school days, and distrust that spills into every other policy. Level the ground. Mobile units, school-based clinics, telehealth for those who can use it, home visits for those who cannot, and transport vouchers so a bus fare never blocks chemotherapy. If you can picture a grandmother getting her pills on time, a kid seeing a dentist at school, a chef getting his cut sutured at 10 p.m. without bankruptcy. You can picture a city that heals itself every day, not only in crisis. Information is a city's second water. When it flows clean and steady, lives are easier. When it floods or fouls, people drown in rumour or thirst in deserts of paywalls. The printing press made ideas copyable. The telegraph made them fast. The radio made them shared. The internet made them everywhere all at once. The gifts are huge. Maps in pockets, family calls across oceans, school lessons in bedrooms, doctors on screens, permits you can file at midnight without a line. The risks are real. Scams, surveillance, misinformation, and feeds designed to keep eyes glued until sleep slips. A digital city that helps sets boring defaults that protect citizens. Fast, affordable broadband to every building. Public Wi-Fi in libraries and parks. Privacy by design in public apps. Open data for buses, air, budgets, and outages, so anyone can build useful tools. Cybersecurity crews that patch before villains knock. Digital literacy in schools and senior centres, so people can spot tricks and update safely. Government can do many services online and still keep a counter for those who need a person. Interfaces matter. Clear language, translations, big fonts, no maze clicks, and a simple path to a human when forms confuse. Social media is a public square with private landlords. Cities can't control it, but they can model good practice. Post timely, factual updates, correct errors without shame, refuse to amplify fear, and answer with kind speed when floods, fires, or rumours rise. For personal life, attention is the new scarce resource. Devices are tools. Unstructured feeds are bottomless bowls. Schools and workplaces should teach attention hygiene like hand washing, silencing notifications by default, batching messages, protecting meeting-free focus blocks, using asynchronous docs, and respecting time zones. Homes benefit from phone-free rooms or hours, chargers outside bedrooms, and family norms like screens down at dinner, not as punishment, but as practice in being together. Libraries can lend hotspots and laptops. Employers can lend IT help to small firms. Neighbourhoods can share message boards that mix digital posts with real corkboards on real walls, because not everyone is online. The city should publish plain dashboards, buses on time or late, potholes reported and fixed, air today, water leaks, building permits, crimes mapped with context, spending in charts, not just PDFs. Trust grows when people can check power without passwords. Last, remember that the brain tires when everything pings. A park without screens, a train car with a quiet section, a cafe where music stays low. These are rest stops for attention. The digital city we want keeps friction low for what matters, booking a vaccine, finding a bus, and friction high for what harms, bots that harass, frauds that empty accounts. It invites enough connection and enough quiet so minds can work and then rest. Climate is turning the dial on heat, rain, wind, and sea, and cities, dense knots of people and pipes, feel each notch. Old rules still work. Count honestly, prepare early, maintain always. First is heat. Asphalt and roofs soak sun all day and radiate it at night. Trees cut decades ago for parking leave blocks that never cool. Heat kills more quietly than storms. Elderly in walk-ups, workers on roofs, children in stifling rooms. Fixes are physical and social. Plant street trees and keep them watered. Paint roofs cool or lay reflective membranes. Build shade at stops and schoolyards. Open cooling centres with late hours and transit. Check on neighbours. Enforce rest watershade rules on hot sites. Water is friend and threat. Cloudbursts overwhelm old drains. Seas push into river mouths. Droughts shrink reservoirs. Snow lines creep uphill. Adaptation is plumbing plus parks. Bigger pipes where needed, but also green streets that soak rain, bioswales along curbs, rain gardens on corners, porous pavements, detention basins that act as soccer fields in sun and ponds in storms, daylighted streams that carry floods safely, backflow valves in basements, elevated equipment so pumps don't drown. Coasts need living shorelines, marsh, oyster, mangrove, where possible, and setbacks and higher first floors where not. Some places will choose levees, some will choose retreat. The bravest act of care can be to move a neighborhood before the sirens. Power and water systems need loops and spares, microgrids that island in outages, solar plus storage at clinics and schools, diesels tested, transformers above floodlines, pipes mapped, and valves that actually turn. Fire follows heat and drought. Wildland urban edges need cleared buffers, fire-resistant roofs, sprinklers, evacuation routes that don't bottleneck, and sirens and tech systems that reach even sleeping phones. Planning must be honest about who suffers first. Low-income blocks near highways, workers in the sun, renters in attic rooms, and fix those first. Trees, insulation, AC, that people can afford to run, and retrofits funded the way we fund roads because saved ER visits and lives are public returns. Prepare people as well as pipes. Drills that feel like picnics, mutual aid maps, apps that work offline, backpacks with lights and meds, neighbours who know who needs stairs. Climate work is not only defence, it is jobs. Planting crews, insulators, electricians, pump techs, data mappers, roofers, park builders. Done well, adaptation makes the city nicer even on good days. Cooler walks, cleaner air, birds back, streams that don't stink, bills lower because buildings waste less. It is not a one-summer sprint, it is a lifetime tune-up. Start now, measure often, fix small breaks before they grow, and teach kids to love shade and drains as much as statues. Cities breathe through their culture. The songs in subways, murals under bridges, theatre over a bakery, a market that smells like 10 countries by noon. Culture is not frosting, it is circulation for belonging and new ideas. Artists turn warehouses into studios, audiences turn alleys into venues. A night market becomes a classroom where older hands teach younger ones how to grill, stitch, drum, dance. Tourists come for this energy, but it is built for locals first. The risk is a loop where culture makes a district lovely, rents rise, artists and elders are priced out, and the very thing people came to feel is replaced by copies. The answer is mixing protections with welcome, live work zoning, legal rehearsal spaces, noise rules that protect both sleep and song, grants for small venues, public walls set aside for murals, heritage listings that preserve not only facades but uses, bakeries that still bake, barbers that still talk, workshops that still smell like glue and sawdust. Markets and festivals need permits that are possible, power that is safe, water that is clean, toilets that are present, and transit that runs late so joy doesn't demand a car. Museums should be open doors with free hours, school programs, and exhibits built in many languages so a city can see its own face on its walls. Memory lives in monuments, but also in recipes, songs, and tools. Catalogue and protect little things. The neon sign, a family repaired for 50 years. The tile pattern, a mason laid in 1920. The courtyard where kids spin tops. When change comes, as it always does, document before demolition, salvage materials, rehouse tenants in the same school zones, and invite old businesses back at gentler rents. Creativity also needs low rents somewhere. attics, garages, suburban strips, plus grants and microloans that let a seamstress buy a better machine or a band press first vinyl. Schools can seed culture by lending stages, buying student art for City Hall, and paying local performers to teach. The internet spreads music and images, but place still matters. A painting you pass daily, a busker at your stop, a smell from a bakery at dawn, these make a city yours. When culture policy is only about famous halls, it starves the roots. When it is only about blocking change, it starves the future. Balance comes from listening. Artists, neighbours, shopkeepers, kids. The best districts feel unfinished in a good way. Room for one more table, one more voice, one more festival in a park that was designed to host joy and then be swept clean by morning crews the city remembered to fund. Opportunity is a path, not a prize. Cities cannot promise equal outcomes, but they can make starts and steps real for more people. The first 8 years set a table for life. Early childhood care with play, language, music, and safe naps helps kids arrive at school ready to listen and be listened to. Childcare near jobs or homes lets parents work without choosing between wages and safety. Schools that are well lit, quiet, ventilated, and staffed by supported teachers produce better readers than any slogan. Add breakfasts, lunches, and nurses, and you erase hunger and headaches that block learning. After school, libraries, mentors, and safe parks turn idle hours into skills and friendships. Transit is an opportunity machine. A cheap, frequent bus or train every 10 minutes that runs late means a teen can reach an internship, a nurse can reach a night shift, and a laid-off worker can hunt jobs without a car note. Fares that don't punish the poor, capped weekly, discounts for students and seniors, keep doors open. Apprenticeships in the trades, electric, pipe, HVAC, welding, coding, give young adults paid ladders into work that cannot be offshored and that builds the very city they live in. Employers can partner with high schools and community colleges to align curricula with real tools and real wages. Micro-credentials and night classes help adults bend their paths. Nurses to nurse practitioners, drivers to dispatchers, cashiers to bookkeepers. Nets catch those who slip. Rental help that hits before eviction, food benefits that are easy to claim, legal aid for small debts and wage theft, shelter that is safe, rehab that is real. Ladders without nets frighten people into clinging. Nets without ladders trap people in waiting rooms. Policy should be boring and merciful. Simpler forms, one-stop offices, caseworkers who can say yes and fix typos instead of sending people home. Minimum wages, earned income credits, and predictable schedules make budgets less brittle. Paid leave keeps illness from turning into job loss. The city also needs zoning that allows jobs near homes so commutes don't eat life, and mixed schools so children meet difference early and kindly. If you can picture a single parent getting a kid to preschool, riding one bus to a paid apprenticeship, coming home past a park where homework help waits, and paying rent that leaves room for groceries, you can picture mobility that feels like breathing, not climbing a cliff. Not all of the city is on paper. In many places, people build first and ask permission later because permission is slow, expensive, or impossible. Informal settlements rise on hillsides and riverbanks, on edges of ports and factories, stitched from brick, block, tin, and skill. Street vendors feed workers and families from carts and pans. Recyclers collect cans and cardboard long before trucks arrive. Home salons braid hair before dawn. The informal city is not chaos. It is entrepreneurship under pressure. Pretending it isn't there doesn't shrink it. It only removes safety and dignity. A wiser path is recognition and upgrade. Map what exists. Bring water points, toilets, waste pickup, drainage, and lights. Offer plot regularization where safe. Relocation where flood or slide risk is deadly. And always compensation tied to real value, not theory. Work with residents on paths, stairs, and slope planting. They know every meter and every alley. Microloans and materials vouchers let families replace tin with block and anchor roofs. Small grants turn dirt lanes into paved alleys that ambulances can use. For vendors, create clean zones with sinks, storage, and rules about smoke and trash. Assign slots fairly. Collect small fees for cleaning. Provide permits that can be checked, but are not traps for bribes. Police should shift from chasing to managing. Enforce health and lane rules calmly. Protect vendors from extortion, and balance sidewalks so pedestrians can pass and elders can sit. The informal sector is a training ground. Today's cart can be tomorrow's cafe. Today's self-built room can be tomorrow's licensed workshop. Offer business classes, bookkeeping help, co-op buying clubs for ingredients and materials. The payoff is big: safer food, cleaner streets, fewer fires, and families who invest because they believe the city will not erase them overnight. Some areas will need bold moves. Floodplains and slide zones cannot stay packed, but even there, invest in nearby housing so people do not lose schools and networks overnight. The line between formal and informal is thinner than people admit. Every city survives on unrecorded care. Neighbours watching kids, uncles fixing steps, aunties feeding crews, and much recorded work began as a favour. The goal is not to freeze everything as is, but to lift what works into light and fix what fails without breaking the human web that keeps people alive when paper is slow. The future city is less a gadget than a set of habits made easier by design. The 15-minute city is a simple promise. Most of what you need, groceries, school, park, clinic, cafe, transit, sits within a short walk or ride. This isn't a wall around neighbourhoods. It's many doors to the whole city, with fast transit for long trips and complete streets for short ones. Add mixed uses, so buildings host homes over shops over clinics. Allow corner stores again to errands shrink. Calm traffic so kids can bike without an escort. The circular city cuts waste by designing flows that loop. Heat from a data center warms a pool. Food scraps feed digesters that make gas for buses and fertilizer for farms. Deconstruction replaces demolition, so timbers and bricks live again. Repair cafes and tool libraries keep goods in use. Sensors and AI help when they serve people, not replace judgment. Signals that give buses a green wave. Leak detectors that text a plumber before a pipe breaks. Streetlights that dim when empty and brighten when someone walks. Predictive maintenance that schedules a pump fix for Tuesday morning, not Saturday night. Participatory budgeting and civic dashboards turn residents into co-engineers. Earmark a slice of funds for ideas the neighbourhood votes on. Publish progress with photos, not just charts. Zoning reform can legalise gentle density, duplexes, triplexes, courtyard buildings, on quiet streets, while corridor zoning stacks mid-rises along transit so many can live car light. Micromobility, bikes, scooters, needs lanes, parking, and courtesy norms so sidewalks stay clear. Freight needs night delivery windows, small urban consolidation centres, and electric vans so goods move without diesel coughs. Education should meet work where work is going. Green trades, care work, skilled manufacturing, software that runs pumps and trains. Health should continue its march into neighbourhoods. Nurse practitioners in libraries, telehealth in community rooms, vaccines at school gyms. Finance can be modern and kind, green bonds for trees and drains, social impact bonds for shelters that actually shorten street time, land trusts that hold apartments out of speculation so nurses and teachers can live near shifts. Design can stay humble. Benches every 100 meters, public toilets, shade at lights, signs you can read at a glance, maps that include ramps, and apps that include text for those who don't hear and audio for those who don't see. The best blueprint is a feedback loop. Try, measure, adjust, repeat. Pilot a bus-only lane. If speeds and riders rise, paint it permanent. If not, change. Plant 1,000 trees and track summer ER visits. If heat calls drop, plant 10,000. The future is not shiny towers alone. It is systems that make the right thing the easy thing for busy, tired, splendidly ordinary people. We have walked from campfires to skylines and kept one thread in hand: coordination. Humans survive by making promises and then building pipes, paths, rules, and stories that help us keep them. Fire and pots turned spare hours into skills. Trust and gossip turned crowds into neighbours. Writing and numbers carried plans across time. Canals, roads, ships and wires carried grain, news and care. Markets, money and fair courts let strangers leave each other better off. Temples, festivals and music reminded us why we try. Laws and ballots widened the circle of we. Schools and libraries let children stand on old shoulders. Energy and industry taught time to march. Workers taught time to bend. Migration refreshed streets. Public space taught us to share. Homes gave dignity. Food webs gave daily comfort. Clinics and hospitals caught us when we fell. Digital tools can help when they protect attention and widen access. Climate work can make cities kinder even on sunny days. Culture keeps places interesting. Ladders and nets keep hopes from breaking. Recognizing the informal keeps policy honest. Tomorrow's tools, sensors, lanes, microgrids, gardens, are just new ways to keep an old promise. Make the next day easier and safer for more people. If you remember only this, carry it to bed. A good city is not an accident, it is maintenance with love. Leaves swept before they block drains, lights fixed before alleys feel risky, buses that arrive when schedules say parks watered, teachers paid, nurses rested, inspectors respected, clerks kind, shopkeepers fair, neighbours greeting neighbours on stoops at dusk. That is civilization's heartbeat. Thank you for drifting through this long, gentle tour with me. May your own street be quiet tonight, your roof steady, your glass full, and your morning simple. Thank you for watching, and good night.